Tennessee basketball stay in Nashville has been cut very short. A quarterfinals loss to 9 seed Mississippi State and the regular season SEC champions Tennessee go down. I'm Ryan Sylvia. This is Noah Taylor. We're with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. And a pretty unexpected outing for Tennessee. Mississippi State wire to wire. Vols never looked in the game, made a couple of runs, tried to make it interesting at some points, but every time Mississippi State has a pretty quick response. Just what were your overall thoughts on Tennessee coming to Nashville, being the favorite to win the whole thing, getting bounced in their first game?
Surprising. You know, I thought that last Saturday against Kentucky had a little bit of a slow start offensively. Obviously, Tennessee's able to turn that on and make that a close game against Kentucky. You never got that back in this game. You kind of had that slow start, and like you said, had a couple of runs here and there with some chances in the second half.
Yeah.
But it just never got back into the game like they were able to. So I guess that part of it is a little bit concerning. The slow starts, the shots not being able to fall. Rick Barnes talked about it a minute ago. Definitely worried about or concerned about some guys who are passing up shots, and maybe that's plaguing Tennessee a little bit here. And you thought maybe the factor of, I don't know how much of this played into it for Tennessee, but the fact that this Mississippi State team beat them in Starkville 2 months ago because Mississippi State was more physical in that game. And you kind of thought maybe Tennessee would come out, maybe have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And from beginning to end, it just felt like Mississippi State was a more physical team again, and even more so than that first meeting.
Yeah, the two biggest things that stood out to me from their respective press conferences, I'll start with what Barnes said about how when Dalton's not making shots, it's trickling down to everyone else. You can talk about how this team relies on Dalton every game and he needs to have these great performances. Well, when he's not on, Barnes is talking about how, okay, well now Vesey's he's got to take those open shots when he gets them. Josiah needs to take those open shots when they get them, and that there is a little bit of a concern that they are passing up some shots in games like tonight where Dalton just didn't necessarily have it going. On the other side of things, Chris Jans, head coach for Mississippi State, he talked about how they looked at this matchup and they thought they had a weight advantage in the paint. And they scored almost all of their points down low, especially on a lot of post touches. And that's something that they've taken advantage of in both of their wins over Tennessee. The only team Tennessee hasn't been able to beat in the SEC, and if you ask Coach Jans, I think he would tell you it's because they feel good about how they're able to move around Jonas Adu, even a Tobe Awaka, JP Estrella at the end. They felt like even though you have height with Adu, just the sheer physicality in the post was kind of the difference in some of these games and being able to create open looks. 2 straight losses now for Tennessee. You lose on senior day at home to Kentucky, and now you get bounced out of the SEC tournament in your first game. Do you have a concern at this point heading into March Madness?
I think you have to have a little bit. You know, it's kind of that Kentucky game, not so much like we mentioned, but to do it in back-to-back games, certainly this one. Not the fact that you lose, you know, to a Mississippi State team that's desperate, that really needs that kind of resume win to get in the tournament themselves, but the fact that you were dominating this game pretty much from start to finish, that you really, outside of a couple of runs here and there, you were never really in the game, that you were never able to find any kind of rhythm outside of Dalton Connect, who was having an off night. And you go back to what you just mentioned, Mississippi State's success in the paint. In the non-conference, that was a concern for Tennessee. And those losses to North Carolina, to Kansas. Again, you were playing, in Purdue, obviously, you're playing some really, really good bigs. Tolu Smith in that meeting in Starkville 2 months ago. You're playing some really good bigs. Jonas Adu, Tennessee was kind of struggling down there. That was kind of a weak spot for them. It seemed like they had kind of turned the page on struggling down there. Seeing it today is kind of, again, offering a little bit of a blueprint on how to beat this Tennessee team by being more physical to them in the paint. I think that is a little bit concerning heading into the tournament because you don't know who you're going to get matched with. You may find, you know, one of those teams or another team that could be more physical than you.
Now, are you okay with this team likely being a 2 seed in probably the South region? Now likely, which we'll have to see, but likely a matchup with Houston if you make it that far, down in Dallas. To you, is that preferred over having to go all the way out to Los Angeles if you do take care of business here and get that 1 seed? Is there a way that you can kind of spin it around where this loss isn't the end of the world? Yeah,
and I think, you know, I was kind of thinking of that as the game was going. There is a little bit of a silver lining there. And it came, you know, Tennessee came into this game, I think we talked about it on the podcast yesterday, a loss wasn't the end of the world for them. The way they lost is concerning. The way they lost does leave a sour taste in your mouth, but the loss did not really hurt them in any way. It does probably going to keep you from that number 1 seed, which for optics is nice, being the first team to do it. Sure. But it may free up your path a little bit and make it a little bit more easier. You are going to be staying closer to home. You're not going to have to do that cross-country travel. for Tennessee, I think if you could look at it and spin it positively in that way, that number 2 seed isn't that bad.
And now we just talked right before we made the trip to Nashville. Elite Eight still on the table. Is that still what you feel confident with, or does back-to-back losses kind of make you a little skeptical?
It does, I think, change a little bit maybe, because you can see the teams see how this Tennessee's played the last 2 weeks. They probably know there's a little bit of a blueprint to kind of beat them, to kind of hang with them, to out-tough them, I guess, which doesn't happen a lot. So that's easier said than done. You can watch it. It's having the guys to do it, it's a different story. I still feel pretty good about this team being able to take these 2 losses, turn it around. Like we just mentioned, you get that 2 seed, you're in a favorable spot, a little bit closer to home. I think that helps. I still feel pretty good about that. I am shocked with the way that they played today, with the way the game went. It does change it a little bit, but I'll stick with the Elite Eight.
Well, we'll find out who those opponents will be on, at least on paper, will be on Sunday. We're very close to Selection Sunday, so now we have to wait and see. Is this Tennessee team going to continue to play kind of poorly like they have the last 2 games? Or are they going to revert back to where they were kind of dominant in that stretch? You go on the road to Alabama and South Carolina. Dalton Knecht takes over at home against Auburn, and that team looked unbeatable. Which version of Tennessee are we going to get? It's going to be somewhere in the middle. They got to figure it out. They've got a week to do it. Like I said, Selection Sunday coming up in a couple days, and we'll find out exactly who Tennessee at least opens with, and then be able to look on at those possible opponents as well. We're outside of Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville, so we have content from the game over at VolReport.com. Noah in the locker room, being able to talk exclusively with some players, asking questions to Rick Barnes, Jemai Mashak, Zakai Ziegler in the post-game press conference on podium as well. So content from the loss to Mississippi State, what it means going forward, and then spring football on the table on Monday. We are just days away from that. Tennessee baseball getting their SEC slate started this weekend with Alabama. Women's basketball as well. They'll find out their opponent on Sunday. So everything you need under the umbrella of Tennessee athletics, you've got to get over to VolReport.com to be as informed as you can as a Vol fan. Links to everything you need is in the description. Thank you for watching.